This tutorial will describe the general usage of the Navigation Map Station, or NAV Map, and the taskbar found at the bottom. For detailed information on the NAV Map, taskbar, and all other components of the game, we encourage you to consult the manual. The Navigation Map Station consists of a 2D nav map, the 3D view, and the Digital Data Indicator, DDI. The NAV map displays Naval Tactical Data System NTDS symbols that can be hooked and unhooked with the left mouse button. Depending on the type of object, these symbols can be interacted by using the right mouse button that will invoke the appropriate menu specific to that object. The 3D view and DDI correspond with what is selected in the NAV map, so as different contacts are selected in the map, the DDI and 3D view will update accordingly. The taskbar is at the bottom of the screen and is available at all times regardless of the station you are playing from. In the lower right portion of the taskbar, there are controls to quickly alter own ship speed, depth, altitude, and course by left and right clicking on the individual digits to make them go up and down respectively. The station menu allows you to navigate to the other various stations of the platform you are controlling. Shortcut keys will also bring you to these stations. These stations will be described in detail within their respective tutorials. The damage report lists all systems that are currently damaged on the platform you are controlling. Each damage report entry lists the time when the damage occurred, the type of damage, and the estimate of how long it will take until the damage is repaired. The Orders menu is for the most part equivalent to a right-click menu on the Own Ship NTDS symbol in the NAV map. The Orders menu is available in all screens, not just the NAV map. The History window in the center of the taskbar displays all text messages created by various events in the game and records all reports from your virtual crewmen. The shapes to the left of the History window filter out these text reports into crew reports, radio traffic, and multiplayer chat history. The first platform shown at mission start is always your platform, referred to as Own Ship. As Own Ship sensors detect other platforms, those sensor returns will be displayed on the NAV map as contacts. As other allied platforms on your side make detections with their sensors, those contacts can also be shown on your NAV map as link contacts. The link is a communication system that all surface ships, aircrafts, and occasionally buildings and submarines will report to, but only if they are allied with you. From the NAV map, you can manage your own sensor contacts, classify them as information becomes available from your sensors, and engage them with your weapons. It is important to note the NAV map contacts are just a representation of what the sensors see and where your target solutions claim them to be. Here is one contact that was discovered by one of the lookouts and classified as a neutral supertanker. Since it is visual detection, we can assume that the contact's bearing and range are fairly accurate. This is a highly reliable contact solution, and we can mark it as high confidence. In contrast, we have a new passive sonar contact. This contact is denoted with a bearing line and a range of 10 nautical miles. By default, every new contact is displayed at 10 or 20 nautical miles, depending on the sensor that detected it. When the player decides upon a better range and enters it into the target solution, the bearing line will disappear and the contact's range will be updated on the NAV map. Since the passive sonar is only able to deduce a target's bearing, the new contact is displayed as such. Assume that this contact is a submarine. We can right-click the contact and designate it as an unknown subsurface contact. We will now promote that contact to the link, and our allies will attempt to detect it themselves and assist us with dealing with it. If we promote the contact as a hostile contact, our allies would proceed to engage the contact with whatever weapons they have available. By unhooking the current contact and right-clicking on the NAV map, a menu is created with various drawing tools, data layers, and map filters. The drawing tools are useful in acquiring the bearing and range to a contact and to create markers on the map that you can double-click to label as you wish and enter various notes. The data layers enable you to enable and disable sets of data and groups on contacts. Be warned that many of these options, especially Show Truth, would be considered a cheat and should only be used as a last resort. New to this game is the ability to add manual solutions. These are convenient when your sensors may not be detecting any contacts, but you have information from gathered intelligence or radio messages that a contact is within an area and you want to investigate or engage that reported contact. In order to do that, you can simply add a manual solution and interact with it as you would any other contact. Lastly, you can engage any neutral or hostile contact that has been assigned a category type directly from the NAV menu. That concludes our NAV Map tutorial. Please consult the manual for additional details on using the NAV Map station in the game. This tutorial will describe the general usage of the Oliver Hazard Perry class FIG-7, a guided missile frigate. It will briefly describe all stations on the FIG-7 and how to successfully operate those stations in conjunction with the NAV map screen. For detailed information on the FIG-7 and all other components of the game, we encourage you to consult the manual. This is the navigation station. The nav screen displays the 2D geosit plot and the 3D view window. In the upper left corner of the screen is the DDI, Digital Display Indication, which provides information on the selected contact. Right-click menus allow the player to control many of the game's functions from this station. The toolbar at the bottom of the screen is available at every station. The features and functions of the navigation station are fully described in a separate breakout tutorial. The bridge station is where the player controls the movement of the FIG. Deployment of the towed array sonar is controlled from the bridge, as are the countermeasure systems. In order to launch an embarked helicopter, the player must ensure the wind is within the launch envelope and then set a green deck. As officer of the deck, OOD, the player may go out to either the port bridge wing or the starboard bridge wing. The machine gun station is where the player can engage targets with a .50 caliber machine gun. The ASW Tactical Air Controller, ASTAC station, is where the MH-60R helicopter can be launched and controlled. Once a helo has been launched and the link has been established, the player can take control and assign fly-to waypoints, sonobuoy drop waypoints, and weapon drop waypoints. The acoustic station displays the sonobuoy processor. This is where the player analyzes the acoustic data being gathered by the deployed sonobuoys in order to detect, identify, and determine the position of both surface and subsurface platforms. A detailed description of this station is presented in the sonobuoy breakout scenario. The hull sonar station and the towed array sonar station are where the player interacts with the ship's acoustic sensors. The breakout tutorial, FIG Sensors, provides details on the employment of these and other ship sensors. The EW Electronic Warfare Station displays the bearing or direction to intercepted radar transmissions. The EW equipment contains a database of known radar classes which the player can use to identify the intercepted signal. The TMA, Target Motion Analysis Station, displays the ship's plotting table. This is where bearing and/or range information from the various sensors is plotted and used to determine a contact's position, course, and speed. The breakout tutorial, TMA, gives a detailed description of the TMA station. The Weapons Coordinator Station is where the player enters contact tracks into the target queue. The tracks in the target queue are then available to be engaged by the various ship weapon systems. The ship's missile and gun systems are employed from the Weapons Control Station. At this station, targets in the target queue are selected, assigned a fire control radar, and then engaged. From the torpedo control station, the player selects a track from the target queue, selects a torpedo tube, enters the weapon preset parameters, and launches the torpedo. This concludes our general FIG-7 tutorial. Please consult the manual for a more detailed description of how to use the FIG-7 stations and tactics to employ those stations successfully in a game. This tutorial will describe the general usage of the Oliver Hazard Perry class FFG-7 sonar stations. It will briefly describe all sonar stations on the FIG-7 and how to successfully operate those stations in conjunction with the NAV map screen. For detailed information on the FIG-7 sonars and all other components of the game, we encourage you to consult the manual. The FFG towed array is a passive sonar that is towed behind the ship at the end of a towed cable. Towing the sonar at the end of a cable reduces on-ship self-noise that interferes with sonar detection and allows the sonar to be towed below the acoustic layer to better detect deep contacts. This is the FIG towed array broadband display. The FIG's towed array sonar system will automatically tag every contact it holds detection upon. The tag summary table in the upper left lists all the contacts that have been automatically tagged by the sonar system. The whiz wheel below the tag summary shows a graphical representation of the sonar beams formed by the towed array sonar. The towed array has 22 beams, 2 end-fire beams, 1 looking forward and the other looking aft, and 20 conical beams between the 2 end-fire beams. The conical-shaped beams lead the 2 initial contact bearings, the true bearing and the ambiguous bearing, equally spaced from the heading of the towed array. The waterfall display on the right shows a number of degrees from the array heading to the target for either a port or starboard target. Marking a contact will assign track numbers to the contact and display the contact on the nav screen. Bearing ambiguity can be resolved by changing array heading and watching the relative bearing to the contact in the waterfall display. If the true bearing is to starboard, then a course change to starboard will reduce the relative bearing. The contact will move up the waterfall. The same is true for a port course change and a true port bearing. If the contact on the waterfall display moves downward, then the true bearing is the bearing away from the course change. Since the target is moving down the waterfall display with this course change to port, the true bearing to the contact is to starboard. A tagged contact can be selected in 3 different ways. 1. Click the tag row in the summary table. 2. Click the contact on the waterfall display. Or 3. Select the beam that holds contact. The Mark button marks the current bearing of the selected tag each time the Mark button is pushed. Assigning a sonar tracker to a tag will update the bearing every 2 minutes on both the nav and the TMA screens. The LOFAR search screen displays the 22 towed array search beams and the assigned tags in each beam. Selecting a beam and then clicking the single beam button will display the selected beam in an expanded beam format. Individual frequency lines in a contact's profile will be displayed and can be used with the profile display at the top of the screen to classify the contact. The Slave to Tag button can be used to automatically switch to the beam which contains the tag as the tag moves from one beam to the next due to contact and on-ship motion. The FIG's hull-mounted sonar is controlled from this display. The 2 main modes for the hull sonar are passive and active. In the passive mode, the display will show a broadband waterfall display. Detected contacts can be marked, and contacts will appear on the nav screen's GeoSit display. The active mode transmits sound into the water and listens for an echo bouncing off a contact. The advantage of an active sonar contact is that the player receives both bearing and range to the contact. The disadvantage is that active sonar may reveal your presence to an adversary. The active sonar mode has several sub-modes that can be selected. The user's manual describes all the submodes in detail. This concludes our FIG-7 sonar tutorial. Please consult the manual for a more detailed description of how to use the FIG-7 sonar stations and tactics to employ those stations successfully in the game. This tutorial will describe the general usage of the FFG-7 weapons stations, specifically the weapons coordinator, the weapons control, and the torpedo control stations. By the end of this tutorial, you should be able to successfully fire from these stations. For general information on the FIG-7, please consult the other FIG tutorials provided. And, of course, we encourage you to consult the manual for detailed information on all components in the game. From the NAV Map station, we select the Stations menu and go to the Weapons Coordinator station. This station's purpose is to detect and classify contacts using the available surface search and air search radars, and also to populate the target queue for use in other weapons stations. The buttons along the bottom of the screen are used to enable and disable the available radars, and also to display the helo's transmitted radar data if the helo is currently in sync with the FIG and on the ASTAC station. These radars can all be turned on simultaneously, and the radar contacts will be marked automatically for you. In that sense, the weapons coordinator is responsible for gathering all information on the available contacts and to make the final decision on the classification and alliance or ID of those contacts to coordinate an attack if necessary. Once a contact is considered to be hostile, the weapons coordinator can enter it into the target queue so that the crew manning the other weapons stations can engage it. This is mainly an issue in multiplayer, multi-station games in which various people are manning their respective stations and will depend on the target queue for their particular responsibilities. In single player, you are in control of all stations, and you may choose not to utilize the target queue. Any target in the target queue can be designated as a hold fire target and will communicate that this contact is still considered a threat but is a lower priority, or that the contact is assumed hostile and needs to be verified before it is engaged. However, just because a target is labeled with a hold fire status, it does not provide anyone from any of the weapons stations from firing upon it. Let's add two hostile contacts to the target queue, one surface contact and one subsurface contact. Select the contact in the geoplot display, then click the Engage button, and the target will be added to the target queue. We will now go to the weapons control and torpedo control stations to engage these two contacts. Weapons control provides the interfaces to control many of the FIG's onboard weapons. It allows you to fire the harpoon missile at surface contacts and to fire the SM-2 missiles at surface and air contacts. It allows you to fire the 76mm gun at surface and land-based contacts. It provides the controls to input harpoon plans, to successfully fire a harpoon, and have it follow the designated waypoints. Lastly, it provides the settings to control the fire of the close-in weapons system, also known as the CWIS, to engage incoming missiles and airborne enemies. Let's select the surface contact in the target queue from the missile panel. We then click the SM-2 button to ready the missile for firing. Once it is ready, we then assign the contact to the STIR radar that will guide the weapon to its target. When a target is assigned and acquired by the radar, the fire button will light and we can launch the weapon. To fire a harpoon, we click on the harpoon plan button, select the same surface contact in the queue, and then click Apply. Then we can click Auto Preset so that the harpoon plan will be given a default path to the target, but you can alter this plan as needed. When we return to the missile panel and assign the surface contact to the STIR radar, since it now has a valid harpoon plan, we can click the harpoon button to fire the weapon successfully. The gun control panel works in a similar fashion. Select the target to fire upon, assign it to the CAS fire control radar that will be used to track the target, and then click the Hold Fire button to toggle the status of the gun you're about to fire. You can extend the gun camera to the top left of the screen to watch the results of the gun firing. The CWIS panel is slightly more automated in that when the CWIS is set to auto or full auto, it will engage incoming contacts automatically. When set to auto, the CWIS will engage air attacks that are incoming in excess of 200 knots, assumed to be inbound missiles or hostile aircraft. When set to full auto, the CWIS will automatically engage any air attack, inbound or outbound, that are within range of the CWIS radar. Use caution when in full auto, because the CWIS will engage your accompanying MH-60 helicopter if it is trying to take off or land. The torpedo control station relies entirely on the target queue, as it doesn't have a geoplot display to hook the contacts manually. You may notice that the targets entered in the target queue are displayed along the perimeter of the circular torpedo control display with a line and track number. You may move the triangular cursor along the outer edge of the circular display and jump to the computer intercept bearing of the target selected in the target queue. When own-ship course nears that which is recommended in the course to steer readout and the gyro is set to the best possible setting for the selected contact, the cursor turns a bright orange color. With a good chance of hitting the target, we can click the Ready button and fire the torpedo. That concludes our FFG Weapons tutorial. Please consult the manual for a more detailed description of how to use the FFG stations and tactics to employ those stations successfully in the game.
Torpedo away, starboard tubes. TAO, sonar soup, loud explosion, bearing 189.